Before I finish and explain the fate of all Sea Star, I want to apologize. Especially to anyone who had a friend or loved one aboard the Sea Star. Truly, I am sorry for all the lives lost, and especially the lives I knowingly and willingly took. I have tried, and failed, to find any good way of describing what infection feels like. By the time I stood on the deck with Lily, the whispers coursing into my brain had become so deafening that I could scarcely hear the din as the crowd surged, screams echoing with maddened passengers swarming from the aft stairway. I suspect the chaos was Passenger X's attempt at distraction. After all, I just exclaimed to Lily the dangers of infected passengers boarding the lifeboats, and there was a chance that we might have rallied and convinced the crew to screen everyone before evacuation, but there was no chance of that now, with panic drawing near us, and Lily cried, "What should we do?" Fata Fati as I predicted, all equally dead can't escape fate. It's taking me. I gasped. I probably would have succumbed right there, and let the madness stroll me down to my cabin for a barbecue, had Lily not hauled me and Benjamin through the panic time, leaving me on the floor by the door. She took Benjamin to the sofa and fastened his life jacket. Riffled through his green backpack, found a small pool floaty that she inflated for him, then she rushed to the balcony, scanning the outdoors. Rang out from above, and she yanked the balcony door closed and drew the curtains shut. We're all going to die. It's foreseen. Can't prevent fate. I curled on the floor, head in my hands. We're safe in here. We'll just wait for help to come. Lily reassured Benjamin. It seemed her plan was to wait out the crisis, hoping the Coast Guard would find the Sea Star and locate any survivors. However, there was we're outside. After all, I was still in here. Lily knelt in front of me. "Friend," she said, "I have to ask, are you going to turn on us?" F fate, F fate, I said. She rubbed her face, wiping tears from her eyes. Tears for me? A flutter in my chest, then I realized she was I was a danger to them, after all. She gripped me by the collar, lifted me toward her. And then, she opened her hand, dropping the knife, and slapped me, hard whap. "Snap out of it," Lily barked, as I clutched my cheek. The voices were still whispering, "Fate, F. Don't listen to the voices. You said burning yourself in your cabin is the price you pay to stay and help us survive, right? But we're not safe. So you're not finished yet. You of all people in the world are on this ship, friend. Remember what I told you that first night. If this is the Titanic, you're the only one. Use those special eyes and see." And maybe it was because her face was so close to mine, her disheveled hair brushing my forehead. I became acutely aware of my own heartbeat. That reminded me of what my brother said, that hope was the thing with feathers. That fluttering in my ribs, hope? See the iceberg. All I could see now was the filaments. But the filaments, they were almost like spider webbing. I turned my head, following the trail of that glowing strand out of my ear, ignoring Lily's questioning of, Hey, are you still with me?" I remembered how I'd seen dozens of those strands. Suddenly I understood what was at their center. Like the spider lurking in its web. "I have to go," I said. Lily drew back. "Okay. What are you going to? If I can destroy Passenger X, that might free the infected people." I paused, listening as the voices changed to "When we fail," I admitted. "So in case that happens, Lily, you are going to have to take Benjamin and jump." "What?" "But you've got to," I snapped. "Your only hope is to get away from the Sea Star. As soon as the lifeboats have moved away from the ship, you and Benjamin jump from the balcony. Bring that inflatable thing with you. And once you hit the water, no matter what the crew or anyone else tells you, do not climb into any life rafts. There are infected on board those vessels. Even if people seem to be behaving normally, wait until the Coast Guard arrives. The only chance you have is if you stay." Lily nodded. It was unlikely she'd survive after all. Her hands had been cold, but this was the best I could do. I drew a breath. "Good luck, Lily, Benjamin." I turned away, shouldering my bag and reaching for the door when Lily called back. "Wait, friend." I looked up, and she asked softly. I must have looked at her very blankly, because she added, "I mean from the bar. but your drinks like a fish and tips well. We were never properly. Only in that moment did I realize that her calling me friend this whole time had not been some cordial acknowledgement of familiarity, but just the opposite. For all the shows I'd enjoyed and tipped, I truly was wallpaper to her, had never registered enough for her to learn who I was. Chummy way of addressing a stranger. "Oh," I said. Blinked. I think I chuckled. Maybe I said, Cassandra K. But you can just call me drinks like a fish and tips well. Good luck, Cass. Lily looked guilty. If I had to guess, she'd intended hadn't gotten an answer before this went sideways. No matter, Lily. Names don't matter much anyway to the dead. Which we would all soon be beginning with me highway after leaving Lily and the boy. I descended to the cabaret lounge, loading my bag with more bottles and rags, fully expect. And yet none of the people I spotted on the stairs seemed to take much interest in me. In fact, the only close encounter I had was when I descended the grand staircase, pausing to make eye contact with a gentleman at the cafe who had just stabbed his wife in the eye with a dessert spoon. He looked at me, examined the eyeball, taste, but then turned back to the twitching body of his wife. I heard him call gleefully to me, "Care for a treat?" I shook my head and continued downward, and he returned to her, scooping the other eye into a teacup, then rising and meandering in search of another as the whisper, "More ways on the lifeboat bring a thermos more eyes." Then I was in the stairwell to the lower decks with my flashlight, following the glowing strands into the bowels of the ship in the long corridor dubbed the highway. Blood glistened across the walls and floor. I stepped over a young man moaning for help. Idiot, I died in front of me in the highway, the dark figure at the center of the web of strands. Passenger X teeth bared in that same grin. His tongue, I realized, was chewed to bits. And he was still chewing on it. Disgusted, I reached into my bag, pulled out one of my Molotovs, and lit it. The dead man only grinned as I took aim, through. His teeth clacked to slow, as if the ship itself inhaled. The strands curled in a glowing web around him. And then, a shockwave outward. Ripples in the concrete floor. Oh, I thought. That's where that came from. I'd forgotten about the damage in the highway. Forgotten how he could crack and warp concrete as well as interfere with electronics. My flashlight skittered away and winked out. Glass bit into my palms as I tried to sit upright, and the dead man was suddenly on top of me. His weight pinning me, I rammed my forehead into him, only for him to shove me back to the concrete. Glass tangled my hair and bit into my skull. I felt it. But it's already got me. Flashed through my mind, then his mouth was on mine, his dead mutilated tongue in my throat, and I gagged, flailing, drowning. The whispers were a roar, filling me up inside, all those glowing strands flowing into me. I felt my body jerk, contort, with coughing and gagging, and spat out bits of the dead man's flesh. And then I stood, fumbling in the darkness, slipping on the concrete slick with spilled alcohol and broken glass. And then I saw everything. The azure sea star, my glowing eyes went wide. I gaped at the sight of a woman beneath into her eyeball, the taste of severed fingers in my mouth, the cold metal of the balcony rail as I climbed over it and scrambled forward to snarl at a cowering family inside their cabin. All of it, all of it. I could see through the eyes and ears of every infected person. All the glowing filaments spun out of me now, as if I were each infected person like nerves at the end of my strands. But the glowing strands did nothing to illuminate the blackout. It was not real light, and did not exist in the material plane. When I tried to move, I stumbled over the corpse of Passenger X in the darkness. Frustrated, I felt for the wall. Damn, this pit responded to my will, almost like flexing my fingers. I reached up, and the strands stretched toward the corridor's overhead lighting. At my whim, the fluorescent bulbs flickered and came on, bathing the highway in luminescence. And there, on the floor before me, Passenger X, tongue lolling from his jaw. I gazed on his corpse dispassionately, feeling neither pity nor compassion, indeed, feeling nothing whatsoever save for a mild curiosity. Why had the entity abandoned its previous host? But the answer came to me with the lights. You see, I'd wondered why it had taken so long. It struck me, ordinary humans can't see the strands. With Passenger X as its host, the entity was essentially groping in the dark, blindly fumbling its way around the ship through trial and error. A slow, tedious process. My eyes, though. My body. My senses. Using me was equivalent to reaching through the material realm. I was the perfect vessel, and while revelation ought to have horrified an exuberant delight, I ripped doors off hinges, burst open dead bodies and funneled the blood out from the red ribbons, spattering the walls and floor, just for the sheer joy of all that it could see and could do. Brilliant. The more I flexed our power, the more cold I felt, bound to the depths. Lower decks looking back now, that time when I was under the entity's thrall had the hazy quality of a dream, like something happening to someone else. I do not remember one of the ship's bowels, unleashing terror in the staff lounge and mess hall and corridors, though I done so, as there was a lot of my visions that was not with Passenger X, and so I must have put it there myself. I remember nothing at all, save that the sea star was my canvas and I painted it with blood and ink until the hollow ache in my belly became an unbearable bottomless yearning. Feed it I thought. This desire pulsed across the strand of water, glass. With each rupture of agony in their bodies or minds came a pulse of energy back along their strand. Delicious. Intoxicating. A woman gnawed her knuckles down to the bone. A shirtless old man at the pool crunched into a drinking glass, the glass shattering and lacerating his tongue from this. A name. John. Oh God, what had I done? Abruptly, I came back to myself. The fluorescent lights winked out as I huddled on the floor. No. No, not John. The walls painted crimson, the bodies scattered throughout the corridor. Had I been the reason for them, fated all along? Now that I'd returned to myself, horror flooded me. Caspia feed vessel together fata together feed no. The insatiable hunger carved me hollow. But while I still had some humanity, still had left to act, at 40:44 I doused my variety of cheap and expensive liquors. Then I sat down in the space formerly occupied by my crispy corpse. In my trembling hand I lifted a matchbook. Hope. I wasn't changing anything, of course. In my heart I knew this. Fulfilling my visions. What else could I do? Hope. I sighed and lit a match. They say that sometimes people who are about to die see their lost loved ones. I've never believed such things. People call my vision supernatural, but to me there is nothing spiritual about it, rotting reality of death. But in that moment, as I lifted the match that would bring my fiery end, I heard my name. It struck me I'd heard it a few times now. And for the briefest instant, the light of the flame was the brother I hadn't glimpsed in nearly 30 years. He again called my name. Hope out. I was so startled that I dropped the burnout match, pawed the sofa, wondering if I'd hallucinated him, and my hands found a note. The note I'd left scribbled a lifetime ago back when I was determined to try one more time. Fire and ice. It read. Fuck a duck. I whispered, loved poetry. The line he always recited to me, hope is the thing with feathers, was from an Emily Dickinson poem. But Fire and Ice was the title of a different poem by Robert Frost. Why, to my future self, would I invoke a poem about the world's end? The world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, pause struck. If I had to perish twice. Suddenly, the meaning clicked. My visions into the present so that it could interact with the material world. If it had the power to use my attunement like that, to affect time and fate and my special sight, what if I could also use it? And just once change fate? Burning myself would mean fulfilling my own prophecy. It didn't even mean destroying the entity possessed. There was every likelihood the entity would continue to use my corpse, no matter how crispy.